Hello and welcome to another Crypto Insider interview. And today my guest is none other than Udi Wertheimer, who is a cryptocurrency developer, a freelancer who is not quite a Bitcoin core developer, but is a developer nonetheless.
Yep. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah.
So what's the exact terminology which I was supposed to tell, but I forgot how it's phrased?
I'm usually just saying that I'm an independent developer in the Bitcoin space. I wouldn't say that I'm a Bitcoin developer because I'm not specifically a Bitcoin core contributor at all, but definitely a developer.
I've read one of your articles on Medium from 2017, and you mentioned the checks and balances of Bitcoin and how it's important to run a node. And you made a very nice comparison with politics. And you said that the miners are the politicians and the nodes are like the media and the citizens who have leverage over their politicians. And could you please explain in simple terms why it's so important to run a full node?
Yeah. So this article was at the time that SegWit 2x was discussed, and the whole New York agreement. I think it was around August 2017, if I recall correctly. Um, so the nice thing about running your own full node and using it, not just running it but using it, is that you get to set your own rules. You get to validate the rules that everyone is using. And in that specific article, I kind of compared that to being your own media outlet where you can look into and research how other people are following the rules, and you don't have to count on anyone else to make these checks for you. You can do it yourself, and that's pretty unique in the Bitcoin space. You can't really do it in most walks of life. You can't validate that everyone is following any specific rules in most things, but in Bitcoin you can. And I think it's very useful to do so and to take advantage of the power, especially that it's not as difficult as people make it to be. It's pretty easy. You set it up once on pretty basic hardware and you can just keep doing it. The other really great benefit is privacy. Because usually when someone else is running a full node for you, or if you use like some kind of wallet that connects to some server or an SPV wallet, then you're kind of telling the world which addresses you care about so that they can tell you your balance. If you're running your own full node, then you don't have to ask anyone. You do everything in your own machine and no one knows which addresses you care about. So it's a major boost to privacy. So that's great. I think everyone should take advantage of that because it's much easier than people think it is. So I think everyone should try to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and it's very simple these days. You just download the Bitcoin Core client on the bitcoin.org website. And at this point, it's a point and click experience. And the hardest part is that you have to wait for the blockchain to synchronize and download on your hard drive.
Yeah, so syncing takes a bit of time. Although, in modern hardware, we're probably talking hours. It's not days or weeks. It's probably a matter of hours for modern hardware. If you have like a reasonably recent desktop or laptop, it's not going to take a lot of time. And it's just once, right? Probably, I think what's maybe more difficult is actually using it as a wallet. Bitcoin Core is maybe not the friendliest of wallets for end users, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but people can try it, and if it works for them, then sure. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for beginners. But I think that there are a lot of newer solutions that might be easier. For example, Chris Belcher is a developer that works on a project called Electrum Personal Server, which is a very small program that you install alongside your full node. And it kind of acts as an adapter between Bitcoin Core and Electrum wallet. Electrum is like a pretty nice wallet. It's pretty easy to use and has a lot of nice features. So it kind of lets you connect your Electrum wallet to your Bitcoin core node. So it backs your Electrum wallet by a full node. And then you can use it with a hardware wallet, and you can use multi-sig if you want to, and all of the nice things that Electrum gives you. So that's a nice way to make full nodes more user-friendly. So yeah, I think that's a nice way to use full nodes as your wallet.
Okay. Also, what about those people who claim that full nodes are not important and it's the miners who dictate the rules? Do you think that they do it just because they are incentivized by their own interests?
Yeah, so I think some of them definitely are doing this because they're incentivized by their own interests. I think that there's also a lot of misconceptions about how Bitcoin works, how the enforcement of the rules work. I think that one analogy that I really like that I've been seeing people talking about recently is the Bitcoin is kind of like English, the language, right? So you have me and you, we've never talked before, on video. We never talked about the rules of the languages we're going to use. We both know English, and we both, I mean, none of us are probably native English speakers, but we both have pretty good understanding of how English works and the grammar rules and so on. And we use that pretty naturally. So we can talk with each other, even though we didn't have any setup to this communication. So, and another nice thing about English is that there's no like authority that decides words in English and so on. It kind of comes up from usage. So, so Bitcoin is kind of like that. Assuming that we both use the same rules, we can both reach the same, the same final agreement on what's going on in the Bitcoin network. So, but we have to use the same rules for that, and this has to come from the bottom. It can't come from someone else telling us to do it. If someone else were to tell us to do, to specify the rules, then it would have been much easier to just use other solutions, like, I don't know, use a bank account or whatever, because then you have someone who's forcing you to do whatever they want, which is fine sometimes. I mean, a lot of times that I have this debate with people, then they're saying, it's okay if miners decide the rules, and maybe it is. If it's okay for someone that someone else makes the rules for them, I'm not saying that they're wrong, right? If that's what you want, go for it. But I think that the promise of Bitcoin is different. I think that the big benefit is not there. So I think that the really big benefit is being independent and owning your own, not just owning your own funds, but owning your, the future of how it's going to work and how it's going to roll out. So I think that it's much more important to have this self-independence and sovereignty than letting someone else take care of it. So I think that's a big part of what makes Bitcoin what it is.
Yeah, in your article, you also mentioned that there isn't much novelty in Bitcoin in terms of computer science, because chaining blocks and creating connections between transactions is also done in Merkle trees and other innovations. But the true innovation which was brought into Bitcoin is the game theory part, in which everybody who participates in the system is incentivized to follow the rules so that everybody wins if they do.
Yeah. And it's fun. I love looking back at this blog post because it's not that old, right? It's about 1 year old, and still when I read it, I think about how my own view kind of maybe advanced since then, and probably I don't know, it's something that I enjoy looking back on, the ways that I keep looking back at what I thought about Bitcoin in the past and how it kind of changes. So I still pretty much agree with what I said back then, but yeah, I think that the main thing that keeps Bitcoin together is really more about the game theoretic part and the social and community part of it, because there's this kind of social agreement that we agree, for example, that Bitcoin should only have 21 million units ever, right? So this is something that we kind of agree on. And if the code turns out to have some bug and allow more than that, I'm pretty sure that no one's going to let it happen, right? If it will require us to do a hard fork to fix it, we probably will, because this is something that the community is very, very decided about. So I would say it's really the economics, the game theory, and the community and the social consensus that we have. And the software is really mostly there to kind of automate the decisions that we make. We could do it with a pen and paper, right? But and talk with each other on the phone and tell each other the balances and movements of Bitcoin. But we have the software that allows us to do this automatically and without putting too much effort into it. And we need to understand this is its role. It's not more than that. This is all that it does. And if it has bugs, we can fix them. If it works as good as it usually does, then it's great. But we need to remember what its role really is. It's not anything. I forget the word. It's not. It's not something that we came from the heavens and we have to accept it as it is. It's just a tool.
Yeah, I recently began to read from Tim May, who also wrote the Cyphernomicon, which is maybe the encyclopedia of cypherpunks. And in an interview which he gave a few years before his passing, he commented on Bitcoin. And he said that at the time when the white paper was sent on the cypherpunk mailing list, nobody thought it was very novel or special in any way. It was mostly economic talk, but not much. It didn't have much to do with the cryptography, which was being sent on their mailing list. And also, he also mentioned something which is relevant for your background, that he doesn't see the value proposition of Bitcoin if it's turning into the next PayPal.
Yeah. So I used to work at PayPal for a while, and it was a great experience. By the way, I love the people there, and I love what we were doing. I think PayPal is a great company. I think they have great service, but I can see how sometimes PayPal values don't work with what some people want to do, and I think it's really important that we have an alternative to PayPal and services like that, because they don't always have the best interests of all of their customers. So it's really important that we have an alternative. But I think it's also important to remember that we already have like good services for some of the things that we may want to do. So if I just want to, if a friend of mine is just sitting next to me and I just need to wire a couple of bucks to them, there are great ways to do that, not necessarily with Bitcoin, because it's probably going to be faster and cheaper if I use some centralized method. So I usually don't like using Bitcoin just for just to say I'm using Bitcoin. I'm using Bitcoin when it's the best tool for the job, and I tend not to use it when it's not. So, and I think it's fine. I think it's kind of dishonest to try to say otherwise. It's kind of, people try to pimp Bitcoin as something that it's not sometimes. And what, anyone can use it however they want, but I think that just pushing it onto your friends for no reason starts, after a while, it starts getting boring for all parties involved. So I'm all for using the best tool for the job, whatever you need to get done. And sometimes that's Bitcoin, sometimes it's something else. I think it's fine.
That's actually a parallel with the early days of Bitcoin, when people who were owning Bitcoin were always trying to convince everybody around them to accept Bitcoin as payment. And at the time, you didn't have big transaction fees just because the network was never congested. You didn't have a high demand for space and blocks. So it made sense for them to try to push adoption. But from this point onwards, I guess it makes sense to rationalize every decision and figure out what makes sense for you in the context.
Yeah, I agree, for sure. I think that it's also sometimes a way to lose friends very quickly, right? If you push it too hard, at some point they become annoyed. And that's, you know, I was there. I know what it feels like to talk about Bitcoin with everyone whenever you meet them. And sure, I guess some people are happy and thankful that I talked with them about Bitcoin earlier on, but it gets old, right? Your friend wants to pay for a beer and you start talking about Bitcoin. Sometimes they want to talk about something else.
Yeah, I used to do this agreement with people, and I would say, you pay for dinner and I give you my half in Bitcoin. And
Yeah.
in some cases, it was a bad idea, especially in late 2017, when actually they were
Yeah.
excited about it. Like, oh yeah, I'm getting Bitcoin. It's the biggest asset on markets right now. Those who view it as an asset, and in the end, they ended up messaging me and saying, "Oh, you tricked me."
Yeah, usually when they want it, it's not when they should take it, right? Usually it's when they list when they don't want to get any Bitcoins, that it's probably the best time for them to get them. But yeah, it's just the way it is.
And not financial advice, by the way.
Oh no. Oh no, not at all.
Okay, so do you have any other projects in crypto that you like or you appreciate for their technology?
Yeah, so really I think that, as we said, anything related to helping people use their own full nodes, I think it's great. Pierre Rochard, I hope I'm saying his name right. He has this nice little tool. He calls it the LN Launcher, I think. It just helps you set up a full node with your with a Lightning node on your like Windows or Mac machine, and then it helps you set it up with a Lightning wallet. And it's pretty easy. It has like all the things configured correctly to work together, and you get buttons to set up other Lightning apps that you may want to use, like Lightning Jow, which is an extension for browsers to pay to do Lightning payments in your browser without leaving your browser. So it kind of sets everything up together for you, and it's pretty easy experience. A lot of people ask me for a pretty long time, how do I start using Lightning? And so, I would send them like long blog posts and tutorials that would explain how to do that, and they would usually give up. And it's great that I can finally share a link to Pierre's tool that just sets everything up for them, and they can get ready to go very fast. So I think things like that, it's simple, but it's very, very useful to onboard new people and to help people experiment. I think it's really great. So that's like one category of things. I think that, coming up, I don't know if I should call it a project per se, but coming up in Bitcoin, things like Schnorr and hopefully things like Taproot later will really help things like privacy in many sometimes surprising ways. So I think it's really important. I think that privacy is probably, in my eyes, it's one of the most important things to improve in the Bitcoin community. So if we're talking about privacy, then I think the Wasabi wallet by the ZK Snacks team and NoPar73, I think it's really great work. They kind of started up really fast and it works really well. If someone has if someone's watching this didn't try using Wasabi yet, I would recommend to try it. At least give it a shot. I think they have a testnet version when you can use like testnet coins first to just get a feel about how it works. The nice thing about it is that it's not so. One nice and important thing that it does is that it's coin joins your coins, so it kind of mixes them with other coins, and then it's harder to see the history of your coins. So that's one thing that's it's very important. It's great. But another maybe less talked about thing about Wasabi is that it kind of helps educate people about using their Bitcoin in a more privacy preserving way. So it really makes a big deal about what's called coin control, which is selecting which coins you're going to send when you send someone a payment. So usually when you use a wallet, you just you input the address that you want to send to, and you type the amount that you want to send, and the wallet will just select, based on some algorithm, it will select coins from your wallet and send them. And sometimes it will merge coins that you received before, and this leaks a lot of information about you. Let's say, let's imagine that you received some coins from Coinbase because you bought them on Coinbase, and you received some other coins from a friend, right? So if you're now using both of them together to make a larger payment to someone else, then now anyone looking can know that both of them are related. So Coinbase knows you from before, and now they know about the other coin that is also yours. Your friend can look and see that you bought some coins on Coinbase, and he knows how much you bought on Coinbase. So you kind of leaking information all over the place, and people usually don't think about it at all. Wasabi makes the decision explicit, and it helps you track which coins came from where. So it really makes things, it makes you more knowledgeable about what information you're leaking, and it helps you avoid leakage. So I think that's, it's a great tool to gain some experience with if you're a Bitcoiner.
So how do you compare Wasabi wallet with Samurai?
So I think Samurai is, it's an interesting project because they're doing a lot of kind of experiments with trying to get ahead of what blockchain analysis companies are doing. So, we have companies like Chainalysis, which are known to track the blockchain and track the network to try to figure out which coins belong to who, and to make sense of transactions. And they're known to use various methods to do that. So, they're known to use various methods, and they're trying to, they're also trying to make it not too expensive for them, right? It's a lot of data to analyze, and they're trying to do like small wins that will give them the largest map possible of the network. And what Samurai is doing is they're trying to find like little holes that will make life difficult for them. It's not like they're trying to make you completely anonymous and completely private, at least not at that point, but they're trying to like find the little things that would make it harder for analysis companies, so that they will, unless they're tracking you personally, they will probably just leave you alone because they don't have time to deal with all of it and don't have resources to necessarily deal with all of it. So they have like nice features that will, make you a little harder to target. So I think, it's nice. I personally prefer wallets that let you connect to your own full node, as we discussed before. And Samurai doesn't exactly let you do that yet. They kind of let you use your own full node, but only to broadcast transactions, which is, in my opinion, less important. What you really want to do is use your full node to get information about money you receive, not money you send, because then you can keep more privacy. And Samurai doesn't do that yet. I think they're working on it, but they don't do that yet. So I prefer wallets to do that. But other than that, I think it's a great tool too.
What do you think about hardware wallets? I know that this was a big discussion in late December 2018 after the wallet hack leaks, when they proved how they can meddle with the hardware wallets and install external chips for tracking, or they can tweak the antennas to track the signal. And there were many small exploits which they found to meddle with the hardware wallets. And do you think they are just as secure?
So, so here's the thing. Probably any kind of solution you could ever try to use, and that's true for hardware wallets too. If someone gains physical access to that, then you probably have a problem, right? If you use your computer, or some people buy an old laptop and use that as sort of a cold wallet. So that's great. But if someone gets their hands on it and can play around with it, you're probably going to have a problem, because either they can take your private key from the computer, or maybe they just put something in your computer when you're not looking, and later when you come in and type your password, they can steal it or whatever. So you probably want to you probably want to make sure that it's physically secure, because otherwise you're always going to have a problem. And that's true for hardware wallets too. They're not, it's not magic. If someone can take it, then they can probably analyze what's in it. They can maybe make changes to it. You should physically protect it. Some of those devices have mechanisms that, try to help you detect if any modification was made to them. So for example, the ledger, and I think the Trezor too, you can open them up and you can physically look at what's, the chips and so on. And it's relatively simple. So you can, if something is very different, if someone put like something completely new in there, you can see it. And they have images on their website that show how it's supposed to look. And also when you connect your ledger, then they kind of have a way to compare the certificates on the device and make sure that the firmware installed on it is the real firmware that came from Ledger. So there are a few things that they can do to mitigate this risk, but you should still be very careful to protect it physically. If someone manages to put their hands on it, you have a problem probably. So I think that one thing that people do is they have a password attached to their kind of seed, and since the password isn't saved on the chip of the hardware wallet, then even if someone steals it, it's still missing some pieces and can't just take your money. Another thing that people can do is use multi-sig. So I think that a lot of experienced people tend to kind of recommend that you have multiple hardware wallets from multiple manufacturers. So let's say from Trezor and Ledger and Cold Card Wallet and I think there's the Swiss company, I forget their name, whatever. So you get multiple brands and multiple models of hardware wallets and make a multi-sig wallet that combines all of them. So then if there's if someone finds some weakness in one of them, it's not enough to take your money. And if you lose one, it's not enough to take your money. So I think if you're protecting large sums of money, that's probably a good strategy to look into. And I think that Casa is trying to make this idea more user-friendly. They have, there's always a trade-off. It's also a pretty expensive service. I think they're charging a significant fee for the service, but they make it a lot more user-friendly. So if someone doesn't want to set everything up themselves, this is also an interesting option, I think.
Speaking of Casa, what do you think about their node product, which runs a full Bitcoin node, but simultaneously gets you on the Lightning Network with a simple interface?
Yeah, I have it right here beside me. I think it's great. They did an excellent job. It's again, as we said before, the setting up, you always have to set up things once, and this part is difficult. So when companies like Casa have a product that makes setting up much easier, I think it's great. You basically have to order it and you get it in the mail after a while, and then you just plug it in and it works, which is an amazing experience. They have a very friendly and nice looking UI. So I've talked with a lot of people who ordered one, and they all say that it's much easier to do that than trying to fiddle with the command line. For me, I like setting up full nodes on Raspberry Pis myself and so on. So I enjoy it, and it's interesting, and I get to tweak things exactly as I want. But most people probably don't want to do that. So I think it's a great product. People should remember that it's very new and experimental, and it's not top grade hardware, and I wouldn't use it for any significant amount, right? It's something that I would encourage people to use it to learn and to play around with what Lightning is, but definitely not as, it's not a super secure product at all. I mean, it's really new and they're still working out the kinks. So people should know that it's like, it's a reckless thing to do. It's fun and I recommend it, but it's still new.
I think one of the promises which Casa made was that they would integrate onion routing in their transactions for Lightning, because at this point you can track the transactions of each node, and the IP in itself is a security hole if you want absolute privacy.
So if we're talking about the onion routing, there are like two two layers of that. There's onion routing for your network layer, like when using Tor. So this is when you want to hide your IP address and so on. And there's onion routing of actual payments, which is a layer above when you make payments between channels and you have to pick which channels to use, and you don't want the next, you don't want the next node to know who you're going to pay, and you want to keep as much information secret. So it's kind of two different onion things, and I don't know what Casa specifically is planning. I didn't look into it. I know that L&D, which is part of what Casa is, so Casa installs a few tools. One of them is L&D, which is the Lightning implementation from Lightning Labs. So L&D is definitely implementing that, and I don't know what Casa plans to do with regards to routing in the network layer, like with Tor. But yeah, I hope that they give an option to set that up too, because it helps. Yeah, if you want to hide your IP address, it's probably a good idea for most people. Yeah.
Okay, now let's get into more technical Bitcoin stuff. And I would like to have, if you can, a simple explanation of what Schnorr signatures are and why this decades-old invention is relevant for Bitcoin in 2019?
Sure. So yeah, I'll try. I'm still sometimes wrapping my head around it myself, but I'll try. So basically, if I recall correctly, ECDSA, which is the signature scheme that's used in Bitcoin, if I recall correctly, it's kind of, Schnorr was first, and because Schnorr was patented, they had to change a few things, in ECDSA, not Bitcoin specifically. They had to change a few things just so that it doesn't violate the patent. But the reason that we say or think that Schnorr is better is because it allows you to aggregate signatures together, and make it look like one signature. So it's a very nice feature of Schnorr is, for example, you could do a multi-sig scheme where everyone would kind of put in their part of the signature, and you come up with what looks like one signature that you can validate that everyone took part of it. But if someone looks at it from outside, he can't tell if it's it's one signature, it's a lot of signatures. So that helps two things. It helps scalability, because you have the signature is the thing that takes the most space basically in a transaction. So if you can kind of aggregate them together and have everything fit in one signature, then you're saving a lot of space, which is great. And it also helps with privacy, because you can't tell anymore which kind of transaction is it. You can't know if it's a multi-sig transaction or a normal transaction. You just don't know. If you look at it, they all look the same. So that's a great feature. Right now, if I use a multi-sig address, everyone knows, and they can start thinking, why is that happening? Why did you choose to use that? And maybe it's because it's a Lightning transaction, and you can start learning things about it. So with Schnorr, you hide a lot of information, which is great, and your anonymity set becomes bigger, which is also great. And it turns out that you can also do, neat things like scriptless scripts, which is a way to sort of use the signature to kind of decide what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, instead of the script in the transaction. So this also brings in, more privacy, because you can do more things with, one transaction that looks the same. And an interesting idea that Greg Maxwell was proposing that will maybe hopefully come together with Schnorr at some point is Taproot. Taproot basically allows you to you make a transaction that has kind of two branches of ways that it can be spent in the future. So one branch would be, we have, like, let's say 3 of 3 people that will sign it, or 2 of 2 people that will sign it and agree to move it wherever they want. And the other is some sort of a script, right? For example, in Lightning, I don't know, you'll have some timeout or whatever that will, some lock time that will allow you to take the funds back or whatever. So, and the nice thing again is that you can do that with script right now, but then you have to specify, and everyone will always see kind of which branch you went to once you're spending the funds. So, let's say today, if I open a channel on Lightning, then when I open it, you don't know yet that it's a Lightning channel. It looks like it's some P2SH transaction that people can't know exactly what it is. But when I close the channel at some point, and probably most channels will be closed at some point. So when I close it, then everyone can see the entire script of how the transaction works, and they can see not just what actually happened, they can see all of the options of what could have happened. And then they can know that it was a Lightning channel. So with something like Taproot, when you would close the channel, you wouldn't know. You might know that it was a Lightning channel if it went through a special, if the script had to execute specific things, then you would know what was executed. But if it was closed cooperatively, which means that both sides of the channel agreed to close it, then no one would know. It would seem like any normal transaction. So it will allow both shrinking the space that's being used, and also it will allow increasing the privacy, because more transaction will look the same. So that's, I think, many the great promise of Schnorr. And another nice thing about Schnorr is that because you can aggregate signatures together, then CoinJoin transactions like the one that Wasabi uses, and remember, CoinJoin transactions mean that there are a lot of inputs into the transaction. So a lot of different people are making inputs into the transaction, putting their coins into a single transaction. So if you use Schnorr, all of those inputs can aggregate to have a single signature, which would save, again, a lot of space for CoinJoin specifically, which hopefully maybe would encourage people to use CoinJoin more, because it will make them much more cheaper than other transactions. So maybe people who don't care about anonymity at all will still choose to use CoinJoin when they're sending funds, just because it will become cheaper. So yeah, that's a nice benefit of it too. I think Schnorr is a great addition to Bitcoin. I hope that the proposal process and the development process gets us there.
Do you think that SegWit, which by itself is a controversial topic, which even these days receives a lot of FUD, but do you think that SegWit in itself was a great gateway to all these soft forks, which will improve the Bitcoin protocol?
Yeah, so, obviously I'm definitely pro SegWit. I think that made things a lot easier. And people who are developers, I think, who are actually, using and trying to build stuff on top of Bitcoin, if they can use SegWit only transactions, like, for example, like what Wasabi is doing. Some wallets have backward compatibility and they don't do SegWit only, but those who do SegWit only, I think, would agree that it's just easier. To develop, it's easier. I hear a lot of people saying that, SegWit is a hack and it makes everything more difficult. It's just not true. It sounds like something that people say when they didn't actually look into it. But if you're able to use SegWit only, then it's just make the experience easier for developers. So that's one thing. SegWit also allows some sort of upgradability, for scripts. So you kind of have a script versioning, which is something we didn't have before. Before, when we needed or wanted to add any functionality, the way to do that was to take what's called NOPS, which is an operation code for no operation that's included in Bitcoin already, and give it a new meaning. And there's a limited amount of those, and it's also kind of hackish sometimes. It's kind of difficult to wrap your head around. With SegWit, we can have like new versions for scripts, and we can just specify that it's a new version of script and implement it in software. It's just technically easier. So yeah, making changes in Bitcoin script is definitely easier from now on, and you can see that people are finally able to talk about more comprehensive changes now. So in that regard, it's definitely easy. I'm not saying that change is always good, by the way. I think that we should be very careful about changing stuff, but just the ability to be able to technically do that, if the community is interested, I think that it's definitely a good thing.
I know that 2017 was maybe the year when the claim that Bitcoin is obsolete and it will not scale was most popular, and maybe that this view was fueled by all these people who were trying to hard fork from Bitcoin and create their own version. But do you think that there were any major innovations that came out from different altcoins? And right now I think about what's the name of the coin with Mimblewimble? Beam or something?
There's Beam and Green who are both working on Mimblewimble stuff. They're not hard forks of Bitcoin, right? They're completely new coins. I personally think that privacy coins that actually bring something new to the table. So that's like Monero and Zcash and the Mimblewimble coins. I think that they're at least interesting research-wise. I mean, it's interesting to see how they do it, and maybe one day we could use it in Bitcoin too. Maybe some of these technologies. So, for example, Monero, among other things, they're implemented confidential transactions, which is something that was originally pioneered for Bitcoin, but it's a big change, so it never came into fruition in Bitcoin. They're using bulletproofs, which is something that maybe could be used alongside confidential transactions one day. So it's it's good to have people experimenting with this stuff, and I think privacy coins are, at least trying to solve a problem that we're interested in as Bitcoiners too. Then again, you have coins that call themselves privacy coins and aren't private at all in any way. So Dash comes to mind, and Verge comes to mind, and a lot of smaller coins come to mind. You're probably much worse off using them than just, using Bitcoin. And by the way, you might be worse off using Monero and Zcash and Mimblewimble too than using Bitcoin. It depends on if you're using it right or not. But for definitely some of the altcoins that talk about privacy have no privacy at all. So yeah, and privacy is a complicated thing. Anonymity is a complicated thing. You need to still really know what you're doing if you want to protect your privacy with any of the privacy-oriented coins. Doesn't just happen automatically. You really need to know what you're doing. But I think they're interesting. Pretty much any other coin that I can think of, I don't see the point. Not the Bitcoin hard forks, not the any other altcoin. I don't know what I usually just ask people, what is this for? What is this doing better, or why should I care? And the answer is never very clear. So yeah, I think privacy is interesting. I think it's something we should strive for in Bitcoin. So I like seeing other people doing research there. All the other stuff, I don't know. I don't know what it ever improved in any way. So yeah.
Do you think that privacy is essential to gain fungibility, which is the only quality of sound money that Bitcoin doesn't quite have? Or would you consider any validity in the claim that sometimes governments and corporate organizations make that Bitcoin is trying to become friendlier to criminals?
So I don't think Bitcoin is trying to become friendlier to criminals. I think that, Bitcoin is trying to become real money, and real money, bearer asset money like cash is friendly to criminals as it is friendly to many other types of people, right? A lot of people want to use cash. A fraction of them are criminals. And yeah, we would like Bitcoin to appeal to the same people, I think. I don't want to say we. I hope that Bitcoin would appeal to the same people that cash does, and that, gold does, and whatever. So I think that it might appeal to criminals too. I don't think that's anywhere near the majority. I think it's a small minority. And but it's it comes with the benefits, and we have to decide what's more important. And I think that allowing people the option to be private from, not even, it's not just hiding from the government, right? I'm as individual. I don't want my, if I'm paying rent on my apartment, I don't want my landlord to know which other transactions I make. It's just none of their business, and I don't want them to know. And I want to, I want to keep my own privacy. So I think that's important. And fungibility does go hand in hand with privacy, with anything that's Bitcoin related. So it seems, because the thing is that, when we share so much information, we leak so much information, then we hurt fungibility too, because suddenly coins have history. And I agree with you. I think it's a very important property that sound money should have a high degree of fungibility. And I'm hopeful that there, I do think that people, it's related to user behavior too, right? So I think it's possible for users to use Bitcoin in a relatively private way today, and in a way that's relatively fungible with other people who are taking the same measures, but not with the entire Bitcoin supply. So because a lot of people don't take care of that right now, and their behavior leaks a lot of information about themselves and about the history of their coins. So yeah, hopefully we can improve that.
Right now, and I'm sorry I switched the topic to something else, which is an altcoin, but right now we are about a week away from the Constantinople hard fork of Ethereum. And a lot of people have very high expectations of it, and they expect to see Plasma and Raiden network and whatever scaling solutions they promise, but sharding is not ready. But do you see any value in the proposition that Ethereum makes?
So I don't know a lot about the hard fork coming up. I heard something about mining rewards being modified, but I'm not even sure about that. I didn't really look into it. If we look at the bigger picture of Ethereum, I think that the thing about it is that I don't understand what it is and what it's supposed to do, right? It's sometimes people don't like to say that they don't understand what Ethereum is, but I'm very open about it. I don't know, I don't understand to this day what Ethereum is and what problem it's supposed to solve, or people are hoping that it would solve. The idea of a world computer doesn't make a lot of sense. People say that it's a censorship-resistant computer. So, I have news for you. We all have censorship-resistant computers in our pockets. This phone is censorship-resistant. I can do whatever calculations I want on my phone, and no one can stop me. Right? It's in my pocket. It's mine. So I don't need some weird blockchain to do that. And so I don't know. I really don't know what it is. What is it for? What is it doing? So I can't say. Maybe I just don't get it. But that's the best I can do.
I think what's interesting in Ethereum is how the narrative changes from time to time. They started out with the idea of a world computer when they saw that it doesn't really scale and they need a lot of innovation, and they should implement something like sharding, which takes a lot of experimentation. They switched to a smart contract platform, which enables corporations and lawyer firms to store their contracts and automate them. And then they switched to dApps, and then they switched to ICOs. And when the ICO bubble burst, I think now they are back to the idea of decentralized applications.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm probably not following close enough to know. I think, to be fair, I guess that, Bitcoiners, or some Bitcoiners, changed the narrative for what Bitcoin is quite a lot through the years, probably too. And I think it's fine, especially something like Bitcoin. The thing is, the way I view it, it's really this immutable thing that it is what it is. We're not going to be able to change it a lot. It just is. And we should learn and discover how to use it better, but it's just there. And things like that, you kind of adapt to the best way to use them over time. You're not going to change what it is, but you're going to change the way you're using it. So this is how I think of something like Bitcoin. With Ethereum, it's a little bit different because they actually do change it and adapt it however they want. So it does change through time, unlike Bitcoin. So it's a very different thing. So I think if it's something that you can technically change it and keep mutating it, then you need to have an idea of what it is, what it's supposed to be. Otherwise, you're just going to keep changing things for unclear reasons forever, and just, never figure out what the thing is even doing. So I really, it's just hard for me to understand where it's going. Maybe I'm too old. I don't know. Maybe I'm a dinosaur.
No. As far as I can see on your Twitter account, you consider yourself right now to be a noob. So I guess that's it.
Yeah. I call myself a Bitcoin noob because actually, a lot of people started to, when I'm talking face to face with people, they think I'm like this kind of oracle that can explain everything about Bitcoin. But the truth is, I think that we all learn what Bitcoin is as we go. Even those of us who have a little more experience, we still all learn what it is as we go. I think that Jameson Lopp is a great article that I remember. I forget the title, but it's about how no one understands Bitcoin, something like that. Your understanding keeps changing and mutating, and I think it's fine. And I think it's important for everyone to remember that none of us know what we're doing, right? It's just it's still an experiment, and it's still we're still all learning. I think it's true for all of us.
Yeah, but this is a field where a lot of people claim to be experts, and you find ebooks and you find private courses and you find financial advice, and everybody pretends to know what they're doing. And it's funny to me to see people who got lucky in 2017 with their investments, and they say, I went 20x on my investment, and I can give you great advice on what to buy and what to do.
Yeah. And I think it's important. What you're saying is very important to remember. Basically, at the end of the day, those of us who were in Bitcoin before, we got lucky. Sure, did we take risks? Yes. Did we, we follow what we believe in? Do we think that we had some insight? Yeah, but we also really got lucky, and we need to remember that we're not geniuses, right? We got lucky, and I think everyone's thankful for that. But we need to keep things in perspective, and I think that 2017 was a year where a lot of people didn't keep things in perspective, and it was kind of agitating sometimes to see, because I don't like it when people come and proclaim that they're experts in a field that really is just getting started, and I think there's something fishy about that.
Yeah, but at the same time, there are a lot of people who say that since Bitcoin has passed the 10-year threshold, so it had its 10th anniversary, it's already a mature and time-tested technology. Whereas the more experienced people like Jameson Lopp constantly remind us that this is actually still in the experimental phase. And I guess the title of the article was "Nobody Knows What Bitcoin Is, but that's fine."
And I think he's absolutely right. And I think what people should think about, 10 years maybe sounds like a lot of time if you compare that to, I don't know, to Snapchat, but Bitcoin isn't Snapchat. It's not some technology or app for sending emojis. It's supposed to be an asset, and assets that are 10 years old are considered very, very young, right? It's not 10 years is not a lot for something that hopes to replace gold one day, right? It's nothing. So it's very important to remember that. It's also very important to remember that we probably haven't seen any of the serious attacks that people are worried about, right? So, when people are concerned about attacks that, like systemic attacks on Bitcoin, we haven't seen anything that scratches the surface of what's possible yet, I think. So we need to be very aware of that, and we need to really take that into consideration. That's definitely still early. We shouldn't let it get into our heads, and we need to keep looking for ways to improve things and to get ready for when, possible attacks come, and also to get ready for when people might actually need Bitcoin. I think it's still, for now, it's a speculative asset and it's a speculative technology. I do believe that there might come a time when, humanity needs Bitcoin to help it. People might need Bitcoin to save their lives. Maybe you live in a country when you really need it. So I think we need to, to kind of be ready for this occasion and be able to rise for the occasion when it happens. And I think this is what people should keep in mind, and not, temporary price movements. That's not what it's about.
I think we already see this in countries like Venezuela, and are also, I know it's unpopular to mention it to somebody who lives in Israel, but Palestine, I know that they use Bitcoin. And also, I think China is not such a big market anymore. But in South Korea, it was the hottest asset and very popular technology back in 2017. And
Yeah.
I guess they still get very involved in it.
Yeah, it was probably very popular in South Korea. I would imagine no one used it there to try and save their lives, right? But yeah, it was probably popular for more speculative reasons. I do keep hearing about people using it in Venezuela, and a little bit too in around where we live in Palestinian territories. I've been hearing about it. In both cases, I don't know if it's as popular as people say that it might be, because there's a lot of marketing involved there too. For example, there are a lot of coins that kind of try to market that there's a lot of usage of cryptocurrencies in Venezuela. I'm not sure how real it is. I try to talk with people who actually live there, and I get sometimes conflicting reports. So some say that they use it a lot. Some say that almost no one cares about it except the people pushing it, and I don't know. But I think that it might one day become very, very real issue that I hope not, but it might become a very real issue that someplace on the earth people will have to use it to survive, and if so, I think we should be ready for it. So I think that's the most important part.
So what was it that got you into Bitcoin?
That's a good question. I think I think I got to read their white paper, and what I thought about Bitcoin back then was very different from what I think today. But nonetheless, when I read the white paper, it just really excited me, because back then I was very interested in peer-to-peer technologies for file sharing, like sharing files on the internet with BitTorrent, and before that there was Gnutella and so on. So this was I really like the idea that you have those networks that don't have any server behind them. It was interesting, like technologically, not because I thought ideologically you could do something with it, but just technologically it was an interesting challenge. So I was very interested in that. And then when I found the white paper, I was like, wow, you can do so much. So I was, I spent a lot of nights reading about it and so on. I think it's a story that a lot of people know, that you suddenly you hear about Bitcoin, you stop sleeping for a few months. So yeah, it was something like that. It was mostly about the technology for me back then, for a very long time. And I think after a while I started to see how an asset like Bitcoin could make things different for people. I started to see how the current financial system works, and the way that, because intermediaries can influence your ability to do stuff, they kind of have to. So it's not that they always want to do that. So for example, I worked at PayPal. PayPal doesn't really want to make life difficult for their customers, but they have regulations that they have to abide to. And this makes a lot of things difficult for everyone, and the reason the regulations exist is because the technology allows them to exist, because PayPal can have control on people's funds, they have to have control over it, because otherwise they have a legal liability. But if you enable some kind of asset that doesn't have this technical ability, then it could make real change with how people interface with money. So that's why I think that's what I find interesting about Bitcoin today. But again, I fully acknowledge, as I said before, that sometimes it's fine for people to have their funds in someone else's control. I think it's sometimes okay. I don't think you should be religious about it. You need to, as we said, we need to find the right tool for each job.
So if you were to discover Bitcoin today and you were an 18-year-old who graduated high school and got into the technology, what do you think would attract you the most, or what would you actually do in this space?
Well, if I were to hear about Bitcoin today, I would probably think it's a scam, right? The first thing, there's always the stage. You have to think it's a scam for a while and then later come back. So that's probably the first thing I would do. And later, I think if someone is interested in, if someone is a tech person, maybe an engineer or something like that, and is interested in Bitcoin, then I think that the two fields to look into, one of them is Lightning, which I think is going to absolutely boom in the next 2 or so years. I think there's a lot of interest around it, and the moment that it becomes easier for people to use it, it's going to explode. And I think there are a ton of stuff people can do there, and it's interesting too, and it's elegant, because the thing about Bitcoin is sometimes people get frustrated of how rigid it is, but Lightning is simpler and it's elegant and it works, from an engineering perspective, it makes sense a lot of times. So I think that's something that's great to dive into. And the other thing is privacy, because again, I think it's going to make a lot of difference in the future. So if someone wants to make like real impact, I think that's something that's very interesting to look into. And privacy, doesn't have to mean like complex encryption schemes like ZK snarks or whatever. It can be very simple stuff. You can improve the privacy for people just by helping them use their own full node instead of someone else's. This can be a huge improvement, and it's not a huge unsurmountable task. So yeah, you can make it in small steps and it can still have a lot of impact.
Okay. I guess I should tell you that I'm happy to speak to somebody who came from the first wave of Bitcoin adoption and embracement. You're part of that crowd, which was geeky in a way and thought the technology was cool. And
I'm not sure it's the first wave, by the way. I didn't join that early, but it's an earlier wave than 2017, I guess.
At least ideologically, you align with the people who thought it was a cool technology, and not with the Wall Street investors who said, okay, this is turning into something interesting. How about we buy big amounts of it and maybe dump it on exchanges when it gets to higher value or price, because value and price are very different concepts.
Yeah, but I think, that's what we like about Bitcoin. You can use it however you want. There's no right way or wrong way. Whoever wants to do whatever with it, that's what's nice about Bitcoin. You can do whatever you want.
So what do you think will happen to all the altcoins when Lightning develops to that stage where it's easy to use and it's the cheapest alternative and it scales in a way that it can handle more transactions than Visa?
So first of all, it will take a while for Lightning to get there. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. But apart from that, altcoins always find a story to tell. When blocks were full, the story was scalability. I always thought it was not a very interesting story because it's not a real problem. It's not like people are standing in line to pay with Bitcoin and they can't get in. That's not really the reality of the situation. So the whole scalability altcoins, obviously, and we see that in the year that followed, they kind of changed the story because it's not an interesting story anymore. And I think it's gonna keep repeating with something. People think a lot about privacy now, so you're gonna see a lot of privacy altcoins probably. And next time it's gonna be something else. It's fine, it's temporary. That's what I think about most of these things. They'll always find some story to tell, and it's always gonna be just a story. That's the way I see it.
What do you think about this current trend to have stable coins for each exchange?
I don't know. there's obviously value in having dollars. I just not sure why you need to have them on the blockchain, right? When you look at some, what is USDC, right? It's basically dollars held by Coinbase or held by Circle. You could have the same type of asset by just having a dollar balance on Coinbase, right? It's the same type of asset, the same thing. You have the same kind of security properties to it. Coinbase can always lose it or take it from you for various reasons that they're all legal, but they can still do it. So you have the same security properties. If you have a stable coin, they can take it away from you if they don't get, if they think you're doing something that they don't like. Just like PayPal, right? Now, PayPal is useful. As I said before, I can see why some people choose to use PayPal. It's a useful tool. So maybe stablecoin is a useful tool too. I'm just, I just don't see why it has to be on a blockchain. Blockchains are expensive. They're difficult to use. People lose private keys. It's not a very good user experience. We do that with Bitcoin because we don't have a choice. We didn't find an easier way to use Bitcoin. But with those things, we do have an easier way to use them. So I'm not sure why we're not doing it. I wonder how much of that is marketing and buzzwords and how much of that is real need and real use. And we've seen lately, that there are a lot of articles on how some of the volume related to stablecoin trading was because that some of the companies gave discounts to traders who bought those coins. So it's not completely organic. And again, it's fine if they do it. It's their prerogative to do it. But I'm just not sure why people should be interested or excited about it. Probably some traders will have use for it. But apart from that, I don't know.
Okay. I feel like I should ask you about events which are related to the place where you are right now in Israel. And I know that last week you had a big party to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Bitcoin. And this week you have a big event which has Nick Szabo and David Chaum and a lot of big people from the industry as speakers. And to me, that's incredible to have two cypherpunks in the same place. And I'm wondering if you're going.
Yeah. So we're gonna have. I think it's tomorrow. We have the Bitcoin Summit, which is a conference in the Tel Aviv University, and yeah, I'm going. I'm actually gonna participate in a short panel too. It's great because we have Nick Szabo is coming and David Chaum is coming, as you said, and Elena Vernova from Casa and Trezor Earlier is coming too, and I think Aaron Van Verdum is going to be there. So yeah, a lot of really great people are going to be there. So it's fun, it's great. I also love that it's a conference that it's called Bitcoin Summit and not Blockchain Summit or Crypto Summit. So I think it's a good sign. So that's going to be tomorrow. It's going to be nice, I hope. And we also had this, the Bitcoin birthday party in Friday. Was it Friday or Thursday? Yeah, I think it was Thursday. So anyway, it was a huge party actually, and we were surprised. I think there were about 1,000 people who came for Tel Aviv. It's a lot for the Bitcoin community in Tel Aviv, I guess. And we had, just a ton of cool stuff. We sold a lot of tickets on Lightning. I think we sold about a quarter of the tickets on Lightning, which was, it was a big surprise for us. We didn't think that so many people would pay with Lightning for their tickets. And we had a lot of cool stuff there. We sold swag and hats and shirts and so on with Lightning on premises. And we had the stand where we would, we called it, it's a scam advisory stand. So you could come with your idea for an ICO and we would tell you, how many coins you're going to get and how you're going to publish it. And we had a scam stamp that we would put on your white paper that we print out for you. It was fun. So we had a lot of fun attractions there. And it was really great because we had some guests from abroad, but also it really got the community together. It was a great event. There are a lot of pictures on Twitter that people can look and be jealous. And we will probably throw another party for the the block halving in 2020. So I think if people didn't come to this one, you should definitely start thinking about booking a ticket to Tel Aviv for the halving in 2020, because we're gonna have a great party then too.
This sounds like the exact opposite of any crypto conference in 2017 and 2018, where
Yeah, that was the goal.
you had all these people trying to pitch their ICO projects, and it was all about explaining why blockchain is so much bigger than Bitcoin and why it can be used as a technology for so many different purposes. And you had guests who were dressed in suits and had their expensive tickets paid by their companies to be there.
Yeah, it really was the opposite. The tickets were very cheap, and people just came to really celebrate together and to celebrate the time that we got to share together and to know each other in this great community. It was really just about that. No one was trying to sell anyone anything except for some hats. So yeah, it was great.
Okay, so I have one last question because we have been doing this for longer than 1 hour. And for how long do you project that you will keep on being a noob in terms to Bitcoin?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I've been a noob so far, so I don't see it changing anytime soon. I don't know. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Maybe when Satoshi comes back.
Right? So he can explain to us all what he intended.
So yeah, he can finally tell us what this is all about. No, I'm kidding. Even if he comes back, or she comes back, or they come back, I don't think it's gonna change anything about what Bitcoin is. No one can explain it, even if it happened. Even if someone happened to write the white paper, you can't explain it any better than anyone else, I think.
Okay. Thank you very much, Udi. This was a great interview, and I'm happy I got some explanations for Schnorr and for privacy wallets and all that cool stuff about Lightning and events in Israel. This is probably going to get published soon on the YouTube channel. And maybe that sometime in the future, when other developments in Bitcoin take place, we can have another interview so you can use the same simple language to describe complex issues and inventions that maybe our simple non-developer or non-programmer minds cannot comprehend.
Sure, I'd love to.
Okay, so have a nice rest of your day, and thank you.
Thank you, you too. Thanks for having me.